Hello, Bryan. How are you?
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I like your background.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you.
No problem. I think Matt, he said that he might be here. I give him the link. I don't know what to make it.
Great.
Yeah, perfect. So we'll get started. There's a lot of people in the waiting room. Do you want to share, try to share your screen now?
Yeah, I can. Let me see if you can see it on this end.
Yeah.
I think it's working. Okay,
yes,
great.
Yeah, it's working. Yeah, perfect. Awesome. I'll just let everybody in now.
Yeah, no worries. So I'll wait for you to kind of cue everything in, and then we'll get started.
Sure, perfect. Thank you. I'll speak a little bit Chinese first. And so do you want me to help with some translation?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, if you can, I'll probably just do a couple phrases and then you could translate.
Okay, perfect. So I have people coming in now. Wait a couple of minutes.大家好，我们的讲座马上就要开始了，非常感谢今天大家来参加 CAMA 的这次公益讲座。因为大家也知道，其实最近的话，像这些大学都在发出各种各样的 offer， 然后呢，有很多孩子就是上一届申请的孩子，很多都已经开始陆续的这样录取了。我们其实在去年办讲座的时候，当时请UCI 的本科生学院的院长过来帮我们分享的时候，当时大家很多人提到了，就是说关于本科生 UCI 的话，他们是具体是怎么样来录取学生的？那包括新冠的话有哪些变化？所以呢，我们在 follow up 的话，就是特别有邀请到 UCI 的这个招生办公室的负责，他主要是负责这种市场和宣传的这样的负责人 Bryan， 然后帮我们来介绍一下。就是整个 UCI 的包括其实 UC 系统他们的在大学录取上的一些细节。具体的话，我们今天交给 Bryan， 非常感谢大家今天来到 CAMA。我们下礼拜的话还有一个就是报税相关的讲座，就是节税和报税相关的，大家也可以关注一下人在加州的微信号和我爱尔湾的微信号，上面有具体的报名的信息。Thank you so much, Bryan, for coming to CAMA, and really appreciate everything. And I think we have around 100 80 people register, but they're coming on right now, but we can get started.
Okay, sure, thank you. So I'll go ahead and share my screen, and then we can get started here.
Great.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining. So my name is Bryan Jue. I'm the Senior Director for undergraduate admissions at UCI. I also, as an alumni of UCI, so I went to UCI as a student a very long time ago, and I get to work in the admissions office. I'm also Chinese, but I only understand a little bit of Cantonese since I'm originally from LA, and I was born and grew up there, so. And I don't know if you want to, if everyone can understand me, or if you want to translate that.
Yeah. Okay. 刚才大家提到了 Bryan 的话，他是最早是在 UCI 毕业，他自从 UCI 毕业了之后，一直都在 UCI 的工作，所以他现在主要是在招生办公室，然后负责这个招生相关的这些业务。那他自己本身呢也是华人，但是他从小的时候是在美国长大的，所以他中文的话不是特别好。所以我到时候会帮他来翻译，非常感谢。
Great, thank you. So today, I will talk a lot about just the University of California system in general, and then afterwards, if people have questions, I'm happy to stay to answer. But very first off, I just want to introduce the University of California. So even though we call ourselves the University of California, there's really 9 undergraduate campuses, but there's one set of application requirements. So as we talk about the applying to UCI, we're really talking about applying to the UC system. So you can kind of see the map here.
OK， 刚才那个 Bryan 提到了，就是说，其实在整个 UCI 的申请的话，其实是主要的话，并不是只是申请，就是在申请的时候，其实并不是申请一家学校，实际上就相当于是申请整个这个系统里面的学校，所以他们的这个申请的方式的话，各种方面的话，其实是一样的。
So yeah, you might see some familiar names such as like Berkeley and Davis and LA and San Diego, Riverside, Irvine, like that. So even though we are one university requirement, each campus actually selects their own students based on them on their own requirements. So it's one set of requirements, so one application, but every campus does their own processes a little differently.
OK。所以呢，其实，在提交这个申请的时候的话，实际上是用的是一个申请，但是每个学校的话，具体的整个 UC 系统的9个学校的话，他们每个的话那个需求的话都是不太一样的，都会有不同的这样的要求。
And so part of the reason why I think we're popular and University of California is known throughout the world as a world-renowned institution, you can just kind of see the numbers that we have. 285,000 students that are enrolled there. We have 2.1 million alumni. We have over 160 disciplines. We have over 850 different majors to choose from across all of our 9 campuses. And of course, the graduation rates are very high. 86% of our students graduate in 6 years. So which is why we are a very popular university to be a part of.
所以整个 UC 系统的话，为什么是特别那个就是全球的话，大家都是非常有名的话，首先就是他们的相关的数字，比如说他们一共录取过28万多个学生，然后呢，他们在全世界的话有21000多个那个校友，200多万那个校友，然后在那个他们的就是这个学科的话，大概有850个就是相关的学科在所有的这些学校里面，然后他们的毕业率的话大概是86%，所以非常那个高的这样的毕业率，所以整个的话是让他们的系统的话非常有名在全世界。
So this year, we obviously get a lot of applications. You don't have to read every single one here, but you can actually see the chart. These are the application numbers from last year. So not the current year that students got into. Those are obviously higher, but I don't know all of the numbers for the other campuses yet. So this is just a snapshot of what it looked like last year. As you can see, for the number of freshman applications, we have a lot of students who are applying. UCLA, UC San Diego, Irvine, Santa Barbara, Berkeley, we're the top 5 most applied to schools in the entire United States. So it just kind of goes to show you, not only are we getting a lot of applications, but also our selective campuses, you can see it's very hard to get into versus some of the UCs, it's a lot easier to get into. But it's also based on the number of applications and the number of admitted students they're able to offer.
OK， 所以这个是整个是2020年的录取的情况。这个2020年的时候的话，像那个 UC 的那个洛杉矶、圣地亚哥、尔湾和 Santa Barbara 这几个学校的话，都是那个录取率是最高，是整个美国那个收到那个申请最多的学校。那根据每个学校的要求的话，他们的录取率也都是不一样的。然后有的学校的，像后面的话，有一些学校的话，他们的录取率就更高，因为他们的申请相对少一点，然后接收的这个学生也比较多，所以他们录取率就会比较高一点。像那个 UCI 的话，相当于是在30%左右这样录取率。Thank you.
And I'll talk a little more about our selection process in general. But as you can see here, for even UC Irvine, we had almost 100,000 applications last year, and we admitted about 29,000 students. So our selection rate is very, so just because you meet all of our criteria doesn't necessarily mean that you can actually get admitted. It's a lot more complicated than that because we have so many applications coming to us.
所以呢，这个是去年2020年的 UC 的系统的这样的一个 UCI 的招生率，就是说，并不是说因为他们一共有将近10万个申请，最后录取大概不到3万人。那可能很多学生的话，他们也是达到了 UCI 的这个要求，但是因为申请的人太多，所以并不是所有的学生都可以进的。
Okay, so what I'm going to cover specifically today will be an overview of the application process, what we look for in the application, so how we review it, just some updates regarding COVID about our standardized tests, and then alternate pathways to admission. So not necessarily just applying as a high school senior or freshman student that we call it, or first year, but there's other pathways that are a lot easier to get into a UC campus that I'll talk about.
所以呢，今天的话，主要的内容的话，会包括整个 UCI 申请的这样的一个流程，然后还有就是这个他们是怎么样来就是看这个每一个申请的，怎么样，然后还有就是关于新冠情况的话有一些变化，还有就是说有一些其他的方法的话，可以有更大的几率的话，就是被录取到 UCI，他也会Bryan 也会帮忙介绍一下。
So the first part we're going to talk about is just the application itself here. So in general, the UC application, because it's all 9 campuses using the same application, we have one general application deadline. So August 1st is when the application opens, but you cannot actually submit the application until November 1st through the 30th.
OK， 所以整个这个是申请的一个时间表。那实际上，申请的时候已经是从那个8月1号的时候就已经开始了，但实际上提交的话是真正的是从11月1号到11月30号之间才可以提交这个申请。
And then, so after you submit the application November 1st to the 30th, we actually spend the months of December through March actually reviewing all of the applications. If you can see the numbers before, 100,000 applications, we actually have to read them twice. So we want to make sure that every student gets a fair read. So we actually read them twice. That's why it takes us so long to notify. March is typically when we notify students. And then if you are admitted, you have until May 1st to decide which school you want to go to.
所以大家可以看到的话，因为 UC 的I 的话，他们每次的话收到将近快10万个申请，所以他们有工作量很大，所以他们基本上是从一直到1月中的话，都是在进行各种的这个做决定，所以最后做决定的话，基本上他们会在3月份的时候发出。那大家会给学生给机会在5月1号之前，然后做最后的决定，就是是不是来 UCI 来读书这样子。
So then what are the UCs looking for? The differences I'm going to talk about is really requirement versus selection. So all the UCs, because we have the same requirements, we actually receive the same application data. So in the application, whatever you put, every UC will get a copy of that. We review for the minimum set of requirements, which I'll talk about in a little bit. It's called the A3g Requirements. And then we do review for admission for selecting individuals using content of the application, meaning that everything that you put on the application, we can use that in terms of as an information for how we use it to select the student.
所以的话，就是每一个 UC 的这个校园的话，他们都会收到就是你的申请，因为只有同样一份的这样的申请，所以他们会有就是最低的一些要求，他们先会去 review， 然后呢，再根据你的申请上面的所有的内容，然后来做相关的这样的选择。那刚才 Bryan 他也讲到，通常他们会把这个申请的话看2遍，就不只是看1遍，他们会看2遍，然后来确保他们能就是录取到就是最好的学生。
Now, here's the difference is that every UC now then selects its own students. So when I was talking about, even though we have one set of requirements, Once those applications get sent to the different campuses, our own campus only looks for our individual requirements. So individual campuses, of course, look for strong grades and comprehensive educational experience, meaning doing a lot of activities, extracurricular, having opportunities to take advanced classes. And so we actually assess students within their context, meaning that we're looking at their environment, we're looking at their opportunities, we look at not only the responses from the personal insight questions, but everything that their context in, what school they go to, the neighborhood they're in, the different types of challenges that they may have to work through.
OK， 所以那个每一个 UCI 的话，他们虽然是每个学校都收到同一份申请，但是收到了之后的话，比如说像 UCI 的话，他们就会根据自己的这个要求，然后来看这个申请。当然，比如说他们会看那个比较那个强的这样的一个学习的这样的一个相关的成绩。另外的话，一个比较重点就是他们相关的整个这种教育的这种全面的这样的教育的体会，这个主要就是指他相关的就是相关他能够超出他的这个学科的范围内，然后能够就是去参加的课程。当然了，就是他们在看这个学生的相关的这些教育经验的时候，体验的话，他也会去看整个这个人的他的自己个人所处的环境，以及他能够获得的这样的机会和那个获得的这个资源究竟有多少，他的学校是哪一个，所以这些的话他们都会综合考虑。
And this is also why you may hear of situations where a student will get admitted to one school and not another one. Sometimes you get the situation of, they did not get into UCLA, but they got into Berkeley, or they got into Irvine and not Santa Barbara. It's because each campus looks at its own criteria and looks at the context of the student in their own way.
所以就是每个学校的话，他们都看的是不同的。虽然就是说是同一个那个申请，但是每个学校的话都会从这个申请上看到他们学校所需要的这样的那个特点。
So what are our minimum requirements? If you're a California resident, the minimum GPA that we need require from you is a 3.0. If the student is an international student, it's a 3.4. We do not require any standardized exams. So as you can see here, we suspended the SAT and ACT requirements for freshmen until fall of 2024. So we are not requiring any students to even take standardized tests. We do not use them on the application portion or any of our selection. And then of course the A through G requirements, which I'll talk about a little later, but those are the general classes in high school that we're looking for, typically English, math, science, a foreign language, history, social sciences, visual performing art.
所以呢，就是这些的话是那个 UCI 的这样的一个基础的最基本的这样的要求。比如说他的那个 GPA 的成绩，如果是在本地生的话，达到3.0最低，然后如果是外国学生的话，需要达到3.4。那对考试的要求的话，他们已经取消了对 SAT 和 ACT 的这样的一个考试成绩的这样的一个来审核，所以他们不会去看任何就是关于这个 ACT 和SAT 成绩，他们也不会考虑。然后另外呢，就是对于A 和 G 的这个就是课的那个要求，这些课程，比如说像那个外语呀，然后那个数学呀、科学呀这些相关的这些课程，具体的在后面会再重复。
So for the GPA, when everyone's kind of asking, well, what is the calculation for the GPA? We really only look at the 10th and 11th grade years for their GPA. So a student that takes either summer courses after their 9th grade year, all the way till summer after their 11th grade year, those are the things that count for our what we look at in terms of a UC GPA. The other thing is that we are calculating weighted courses. So like AP or IB or honors courses, but those have to be approved by the UC system, and we cap them at 8 semesters. So a student could have maybe 20 semesters of AP credit. We will still cap them at only 8 credits at that point.
所以呢，就是这个 GPA 的话 ，UCI 的话，他们是看那个 第10年级和第11年级的这样的综合的 GPA。所以那个如果是那个有那个 AP 课程的话，这个就是大学预课的话，这些课的话，他们也会有就是加分的作用。
So you can see here, these are the A3g requirements that we're looking for. These are the different subjects that we actually calculate the GPA from. So they are typical courses in high school here, and these are the minimum classes that we look at. So 2 years of history, 4 years of an English, 3 years of mathematics, 2 of lab science, 2 of a language other than English, and 1 year of visual performing art.
所以呢，这个刚才提到的这个 A 和 G 的这个课程的要求的话，大家可以看到，就是他们至少需要历史的话需要2年，英语需要4年，然后数学的需要那个3年，但是推荐是4年，然后那个科学课需要2年，然后对于第二外语的话需要至少2年的课程，比如说像那个艺术类的话，他们至少需要1年，这些相关的要求，大家可以参考一下。
So then what are we actually looking for on the application? We have a process called comprehensive review. And these are the 13 criteria that we look at when we're actually looking at the applications. So any part of the application can kind of fill in these areas, but specifically, these are the 13 different things that we actually look for or can consider when we're reviewing applications here.
所以那个 UCI 的话，他们是用了这样的一个，就是他们叫全面综合考虑系统的这样的一个系统，然后来考虑这些点的话，大概13个点是他们综合考虑的这样具体的一个内容。
One of the things to also note is that if you look at like GPA, that is just 1 out of the 13. So also when it comes to selection, not one factor ever is going to make or break an admissions. We look at everything in the whole context. So we look at all of these things, and everything's a little bit more or less equally weighted. So something about a low GPA or high GPA will not just necessarily get someone in. Again, we're looking at all the other contextual information. So things like quality of a senior year program, opportunities at like maybe other programs. Do you have special talents? Did you participate in programs? Did you have academic accomplishments or awards or special things in subject? So there's a lot of other factors that go in when we're actually reviewing the application.
所以的话，就是整个这个综合考虑的话，就是大家可以看到一共有大概13条。那比如说 GPA 的话，只是其中的一点，然后他们不会说因为其中一项的话就是特别优秀的话，就会根据这一项来录取。所以就是这 GPA 的成绩的话很高的话，其实他们还是只是他们其中的一项会考虑内容，他们还会考虑其他的，比如说他们在那个在高年级的时候，就是最后1年的时候，他们的课程的学习品质啊，以及他们在那个其他方面有没有什么特别的这种天才啊、天分呀，在其他方面有没有特别的这样的一个成就啊，这些东西。都是他们在整个考虑的这个内容之一，都是相互均衡的。
And one final point about this is that every UC actually does this process a little differently. So some UCs will focus on certain areas versus others will focus on different areas. We at UCI do it holistically, meaning that we actually look at all of these factors kind of all at once, and it doesn't necessarily have to fall into the right sections of the application. So we can look at a special talent, and if you say it in the PIQ but don't list it in the extracurricular activities, that's okay. We can still count it as an extracurricular activity or an achievement. So every UC looks at this a little differently in terms of how they actually use the different pieces of comprehensive review.
所以就是整个 UC 系统的话，他们那个就是侧重点的话可能会不一样。比如说有的学校可能会侧重点就是它的在那个特别成就上的这样的一个侧重点，所以每个那个就是整个不同的校区的话，他们会侧重点不同。UCI 的话，他们是比较均衡的去看所有的点这样子。
Okay, so a little bit about just kind of behind the scenes. What we do for selecting students is we do look at the academic ability, We look at the breadth and depth of a student's involvement. We look at the context of the academic activity. So geography, meaning if you live in an area where there's a lot of opportunities to do things, we take that into account versus students who may live in a very rural area and there's not a lot of opportunities. And every application is read by a human reader. So those are the things that we actually do.
所以在那个就是录取的时候呢，他们做的事情的话，主要是比如说他会看整个这种学术的这个能力，然后另外一个就是你的这个广泛度和就是深度，你的研究啊，还有你的这个参与的这个广泛度和深度，他都会看。然后另外一个就是说你的这个学术的整个的环境，还有就是在参与的这个课外活动的这样的这些那个上下的这种环境是什么？比如说所处的地理环境，可能有的人的话没有那么多资源去参与这些东西，所以他都会综合考虑，就根据所在地理环境去看它的上下文。另外一个就是说，每一个申请的话都是由人，然后每个都是由人来看的。
And then if you look on the other side, yeah, the things that we do not do. So we do not select based on race, sex, or ethnicity. That is a California law, Prop 209, that your background, we actually do not see your background. We don't even see your name on the application when we review it at UCI. We also don't look at how much money you have. So we even though we ask for that as self-reported income, we don't use that to select you. We also don't look at what other UCs do. So we don't call our other UCs and see, okay, if your student is getting into this UC, then we're not going to admit you, or vice versa. We select based on our own criteria. So that's why you see all those discrepancies. And also, we do not select based on a mathematical formula. So there's no formula to do. There's no formula about if you have this GPA and you have this many extracurricular activities and you do these things, then you're going to get in. It doesn't work that way. We don't actually have any formula. Like I said, every application is read by a human reader. So it's the human that is making these kind of, it's making the review based on the information that you're telling us in the application.
所以呢，UC 他们在录取的时候不做的事情的话，就是说他们不会根据你的这个种族呀、性别呀，还有你的这个宗教背景，然后来做决定。这是有一个法案在这里。所以他们甚至连你的名字都看不到，就是申请的时候看不到名字。然后另外呢，就是说他们也不会根据你有多少钱，然后来录取，因为他们也没有这个信息。另外的话，就是说他也不会去参考其他的 UC 系统是怎么样来录取的。然后还有呢，就是说他们没有一个固定的这样的一个数学公式，比如说你这个成绩达到多少，然后乘以多少个百分点或怎么样，没有数学公式，因为他们是由人来做决定的。
So then the other section that applicants really have the ability to affect the application is through our personal insight questions. How I like to view this is it's the student's opportunity to advocate for themselves, to actually build their case and tell us why we should consider them for admission. So the idea is that we ask 8 different questions and the student has the ability to answer 4 out of the 8. All the questions are equal and there's no wrong or right answer way to actually talk about yourself on them.
所以其中有一个比较重要的就是关于他会问他们会问8个问题，那学生可以选其中4个问题来回答。然后呢，就是说没有正确和错误，但是这个的话主要是给学生充分的有机会来表达自己，就是为什么他觉得 UCI 是最适合他的这样的一个学校。
So here's the list of the 8 personal insight questions. I won't read them all to you, but you can see here along those lines, they're very much like interview questions. And so the student has to treat it like an interview. We're not looking for an English essay or a very formalized formal statement. We're asking it in a way so they can actually talk in their own voice. So think of it as an example, like if I were to interview your student, how would they answer like this live in person? If we were to do an in-person interview and I asked the question, what would you say is your greatest talent or skill? How have you developed or demonstrated that over time? How they answer live or how they would just answer that question is how we want them to be. we are not grading for grammar or spelling. We are looking for content. So answer the question like an interview question.
所以这个是举例了一下，就是所有的他们会提到的这些问题，让学生们回答的这8个问题。这个8个问题的话，大家可以看到，就是更像是那种面试的，就是你要找工作的时候面试的这样的问题。主要就是用他们并不去考虑说你回答的时候你的语法是不是对啊，或者是怎么样，它主要是看你的内容，就是你是不是通过就是他这些问题，然后把自己的那个就是充分表达出来。他们主要是参考这个问题回答的内容。比如说举个例来说，你觉得自己那个最那个强的这样的一个天分是什么？然后你是怎么样去开发和那个就是充分表达你这个天分的？是怎么样去发展你这个天分的？就是类似于像那个面试的时候的这些问题。
So as you can see, if you remember the numbers beforehand, we received 100,000 applications. We would love to be able to talk to every student to get to know them. Unfortunately, we just can't do that with the time. So the personal insight questions is like that interview process.
所以大家可以看到，就是因为 UCI 的话，像他们每年的话都将近收到近10万个申请嘛，所以他们其实希望那个跟每个学生都能够去了解每个学生，但是他没有办法那个跟每个学生去面对面的谈，所以他通过这些有点像面试一样的问题的话，让学生能够充分的表达他们自己，然后有点这样的话，他们就可以让这个过程能够比较在有限的时间内完成。
Okay, so let me just kind of highlight a few common mistakes or things that we typically see when students talk about the personal insight questions. I've been a reader for over 15 years. I read over 1,000 applications every single cycle. And these are just kind of the things that I've kind of seen in the past that are not necessarily helpful for us. So you can see these all here, but these are things such as talking about one campus. If you only want to go to UC Berkeley, don't put that if you're applying to the other campuses. Or using quotations. A lot of times students will love to put quotes in. The other thing will be talking about generalities or things that we already know on other parts of the application. So typical things like this are things to avoid when actually filling out the personal insight question. Again, the focus is on the student. So have the student or the applicant talk about themselves. Don't introduce information or stuff that doesn't relate to them specifically.
所以刚才 Bryan 提到了，就是说，他每年的话，其实也审核那个，就是很多大概是上千份的这样的那个申请，所以他们经常看到这些是常犯的一些错误。比如说的话，就是第一个的话，就是会只是提到一家的这样的其中的一个分校，比如说你要想去 UC 那个 Santa Barbara，但是一直都是说我要去 Santa Barbara 什么之类的，所以像这个是一个今天常见的那个错误。或者是比如说就是在已经原来申请中已经提到的内容，然后在这里再重复，然后用比较多的这样的那个别人的话，然后来说，实际上的话，它是通过就是这几个问题，然后真正的来了解学生，所以让学生用他自己的角度，然后来那个表达自己这样子。
So just a quick list. There is a lot of help in terms of getting information about this in terms of our application. So we have a quick reference guide that is open to the public. It breaks down all of the different things such as the GPA, what counts for the A3g classes, and actually tips on how to write the personal insight questions. So we actually put a lot of available information out in the public for you to use. This is all information that I share that is all public and available for you. It's just pulled from these different websites.
所以 UCI 的话，其实他们是给那个学生们提供了很多相关的就是申请的时候的资源，比如说像刚刚他提到这个链接的话，是对于整个 UCI 申请的这样的一个就是指导。这些指导的话有就是整个这个录取的时候的需求，然后他们是怎么样选择学生的，以及一些就是如何来回答那个刚才说的这几个8个问题的这样的一些那个一些意见什么之类的，都是在这里。所以今天我们分享主要内容的话，都是从这个所有的公开的这些信息里，然后抽出来的，就是给大家再次分享的内容。 所以对所有的人都是公平的。
Okay, and then so let me just kind of highlight a little bit about what COVID and kind of our responses are due to that. We had a lot this year that were obviously affected by that. This past year, we temporarily suspended the letter grades of requirements for A through G. So we know that a lot of schools went to a pass, no pass or credit, no credit situation. So we were able to allow them to record whatever the school decided to do. So if the school decided to do a pass instead of a letter grade, we still counted that toward the A through G. It obviously won't calculate in the GPA, but it'll at least satisfy the requirement for the A through G requirement.
所以因为新冠的话，其实还有很多相关的变化。比如说对于那个现在就是在新冠期间的话，很多学校的话，他们的评分系统的话，它没有具体的就是那个，比如说是按照字母的这样来评分，它只是说是过还是不过这个课程。那 UCI 在那个他们的 A 和 G 的这些课程考虑的时候，也是用同样的这样的系统，是过还是不过，然后来算作他们的这个就是评分的这样的其中的一个项目。
And then this past year, I think with many students, if you have students, you know that there was a remote or hybrid learning. So last year, all of our classes were remote. We did have a limited number of students live on campus, but all of the classes they were attending were pretty much remote. For the incoming class for next year, we do anticipate the majority of our classes will be on campus, so we'll be back in person. And then housing as well. This past year, due to the safety, we had all of our students live in single occupancy, so there were only 1 to a room. Obviously, with the numbers dropping here in Irvine and in Southern California, we're hoping that by for next year, we'll be able to open up housing to more students for this coming year. But with the return of classes and the way the numbers are trending, we're obviously hoping that everything will allow us to return to more normal in-person capacity.
所以呢，就是说UCI 在2020年的时候，他们主要是都是远程的上课。那随着现在疫情的话逐渐减好，就是变好的话，他们大概是今年秋天的时候，应该是大部分学生都会在那个学校里上课。包括那个住宿也是，他们之前的话是只是一个宿舍的话，只住一个人。那他们现在的话，也在那个秋天的时候，会根据相关的这些法案呀，还有卫生的这些要求，然后来让那个大家有更多的人可以回到学校住宿这样子。
Okay, so let me just kind of conclude the section, then we'll get to all the questions. I see there's a lot of questions there. We'll talk about alternate pathways. And so the idea is really what happens when you don't get an admit decision. As you can see earlier, we're denying almost 70% of our students that apply to us. So what are the options after that? We have 2 typical options, which are the wait list and then the appeal process. The wait list is basically one of those situations where we want you, but we just don't know how much space we have yet. It means that you meet all the qualifications that we're looking for, and yet we just don't know because of our limited space due to major capacity. Maybe you applied for a very selective major, or maybe we just want to see if there's actually space on campus. There's no rank or date ordered. You just have to let us know you're interested. Then the appeal process is really if you want us to know about something that was not originally shared on your application that you might think is important, or if it's something you might have left out that you think can actually help us in maybe changing that decision, then you can submit an appeal to us.
所以呢，就是说，假如说，在那个没有被录取的时候，现在有2种 option，一种的话就是说，在那个就是这个预选的这样的排队的 list，就是说他还没有接受，但是他可能还是就是说在那个现在在排着，然后等着进。这种情况主要是发生就是说他们审核过了，觉得是达到 UCI 的标准了，但是因为比如说某一个学科或者是申请的人太多，所以他那个不知道有没有那么多的份额，然后也不是按照一定的，并没有就是一定的就是被那个有前后的顺序啊，或者是有这个排级啊什么之类的， 你只需要就是告诉 UCI 的话，你愿不愿意就是来 UCI 这样子。然后另外呢，还有一个流程的话，就是说，假如说你觉得在申请的时候，你当时没有就是提供这个有一些信息，然后你觉得可能会改变 UCI 的决定的话，你也可以去去 appeal，就相当于是重新再去提交一些相关的这些信息，然后看看 UCI 的话，它可不可以改变它的决定。
And also just a kind of final note, some of these things like the waitlist and the appeal happen after our May 1st deadline. So we always encourage people to always accept another offer or make other plans about your education because it all depends. Each year is a little different in terms of how many students we go to the wait list, if we are going to it. The prior year has no bearing on whether we're going to go to the wait list this current year or not. And same thing for appeals. Depending on how many appeals come in, it could take anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks for us to review that because it goes to a committee. So a lot of these answers about whether you're going to get off the wait list or get off of appeal doesn't come until sometimes by the summertime. So it's always important to have another option or a backup option available.
所以呢，就是说，在如果是你在waiting list 上，或者是你进行这种 appeal 的，就是有点像上诉吧，这样的一个手续的话，一般他们都会大概需要6到8周的时间，然后来处理。所以基本上可能要到夏天的时候才会有收到最后的决定。所以他们Bryan 的建议就是说，大家如果是有其他学校录取的话，然后尽量可以去接收他们的申请，就是给自己一个选择。就假如说这边一旦等到 summer 的时候还没有录取的话，至少还有其他的选择可以去这样子。
So then I want to really highlight our transfer pathway. And there's a lot of advantages to actually transferring into the UC rather than applying as a first-year student. You can see here some of the big talking points or reasons why is that it's a lot easier to get into the UC system of your choice, 9 different undergraduate campuses. 6 out of the 9 UC campuses, including Irvine, have something called a transfer admission guarantee, which I'll talk about in a second. Each UC has its own transfer requirements that you can actually easily navigate on a website called assist.org. It'll actually tell you exactly what classes we're looking for. Financially, it is less time at a UC. You get to start over academically. So maybe all of the different things I was talking about earlier about our selection and A through G and all those things in high school, it was too much. You get to start over. We don't look at anything from high school when we apply as a transfer student. And the nice thing is that you can also apply as many times as you need as a transfer student. So if you miss a requirement one year, you can just make that up and apply again the following year. So it doesn't eliminate your chances of ever applying again. Versus as a high school senior, you really only have that one chance to apply to us.
所以呢，就是说，如果想去 UCI 的话，就并不一定是一定要从高中到 UCI。其实他们在还有一个就是说transfer，就相当于是转学这种方式。转学这种方式的话，到 UCI 的话是一个非常相对来说比直接从高中的话相对来说容易很多。那他们9个校区里面的话，有6个校区的话都有相关的这样的转学的这些方式。转学的这些方式的话，在每一个他们的专业的话，都会有不同的要求，就是他需要达到什么样的学分之后，然后都有不同的要求。然后呢，这样的话就是说你可以就是一个是在就是经济上面，就是比如说因为在很多举个例来说，其他这些学校的话，可能收费比较低，那 UCI 的就是收费比较高，所以但你在同样的其他的学分的话，UCI 也是可以承认的，所以从这个预算上面的话可能会少一点。另外的话就是说，他们就并不看高中的成绩了，所以他们只看这些就是你在这个其他的就之前的这些学校，他的这些成绩，所以你相当于是从学术上的话，你可以有一些全新的这样的一个面貌。然后另外的话就是说，你可以申请很多次，它并不是不像高中生的话，基本上只有1次机会。那如果是转学的话，你可以申请，一直都申请，没有次数限制这样。
So let me highlight just that transfer admission guarantee a little more in-depthly. We have a partnership with all 115 California community colleges in the state. So we have an agreement with them. And basically, if a student goes to the California Community College, they have a 3.4 GPA or higher, and they fulfill all of their transfer major prerequisite classes. We will basically, what you can do is actually submit a guarantee statement to a specific campus. You can only do it to one of the campuses. So you can pick one of the 6 campuses that offer this guarantee, and you can say, I want to do a guarantee to UC Irvine. We have most of our majors on there, limited majors such as like business or nursing or our audition majors. You can't do a guarantee, but a lot of our majors on campus, you can do that. And basically, as long as you fulfill all of those requirements, we will admit you right off the spot in that way. So you still have to submit the application, but it's such an easier pathway and route because it is the only time we'll ever say there's a guarantee into the UCs. The only UCs that don't do it are obviously the big ones. So UC Berkeley, UCLA, and UC San Diego are not part of this transfer admission guarantee program.
另外有一个就是大家一定要知道的，这个是一个保证进 UCI 的一种方式。所以保证进 UCI 的话，就是说那个像那个大的这些校区，Berkeley 啊，那个 UC San Diego、UCLA 没有，但是 UCI 的话有。他们的话，这个的话就是一个假如说你在那个他们跟那个加州的这样大概100多家的社区大学都有相关的这种协议。如果你在这个协议的话，那个 GPA 达到那个 UCI 的要求。然后他们所有的这些要求的这些学分和那个课程你都已经修了的话，他们有这种你可以选定其中的一个专业。当然那个比较在 UC 比较那个就是热门的这些专业，有几个专业是不行的，但是大多数专业的话都可以有这种保证条款。所以假如说你可以就是只要达到了这个社区大学他们所要求的这些分数，然后那个课程也都有了，你是可以去保证进 UCI 的。
So here's the breakdown of, you can actually see the numbers from last year's transfer application. So if you look in comparison to freshmen, you can see it's a lot less number of students applying. So this is really a really advantageous pathway for students to get into the UC of their choice. I know there's a lot of worry that, okay, if I don't get into a college on the first end, that's it. That's not the case. For a lot of really good reasons, it's always a great opportunity to transfer. My dad even, he was a transfer student. He grew up in Ventura and went to Ventura Community College and then transferred to Berkeley for his undergraduate and then did UCLA for his master's. So you can still get to the campuses that you want to do with these transfer processes because it's a lot less students applying and it's a lot easier to navigate what we're looking for on that end.
所以这个是2020年的他们当时的这样的一个，就是对于那个转学的这种录取的这样的一个数据。大家可以看到，就是像 UC Irvine 的话，他们去年的话是大概收到申请是25000，就比以前的那个比那个本科生直接高中生申请的话，那个申请的话要那个少很多很多。然后他们录取了9000多，所以基本上录取率的话在40%。录取率就是大了差不多1倍多这样子。所以就是像那个 Bryan 也提到了，他的父亲的话也当时是在那个就是加拿大，然后上的这种社区大学，但是最后他去了那个UC 的这个Berkeley， 然后后来的话他的在UCLA 的话上的这个 Master， 所以相当于是容易了很多，通过这种方式。
And we have a lot of really good partnerships, even with local ones right here. So even though we do any community college in the state, we have a really great partnership right down the street with Irvine Valley College. Almost 70% of their transferring students apply to UCI because of those strong partnerships. Some of the students even take some extra classes at UCI concurrently during that time. So it's always a great process when it's local in that way.
比如说像 UCI 的话，他们跟 IVC 就是尔湾的这个 IVC 的话，他们有就是非常好的合作。像在这里的话，他们的 IVC 如果是小朋友那个孩子们申请的话，基本上70%多都会录取。所以呢，而且他们在同时的时候，他们还可以去在那个 IVC 的时候可以去修一些 UCI 的课程。 这样的话就可以节约一些那个时间，他们在录取 UCI 之后，所以这些都是一个非常好的信息，大家可以去考虑一下。
All right. Well, I know there is a lot of questions here, so I just want to leave my contact information as well as our admissions website. So if there's any questions you have afterwards, you can always email us or chat afterwards like that. But yeah, I want to open it up for some questions. I know there's a few questions in the chat that maybe we can answer live at this time. So
yeah, great. 现在的话是那个 Bryan 的话，刚才他把他的联系方式放在那里，大家可以去联系，还有他们录取的相关的这些网站，然后大家也可以参考。后面的话就是我们现在来回答一下那个就是大家在对话框里刚才也留了一些言，我们可以给大家做一些问答。I got they sent me privately and they said how the region scholarship are selected.
okay, sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Regent Scholar is a merit scholarship completely, and that is something our scholarships office will review. So that is primarily based on academic criteria. Typically, it's a GPA in combination with other factors that we look at, such as the number of honors, AP classes, class rankings, and things like that. That's information that is done on the application side from us. So a student doesn't have to do anything extra for a Regent scholarship. The application, when they submit it and they fill out everything, the campuses will select the student and apply the Regent Scholar based on the information they provide. So there's nothing that a student has to do outside of that. Everyone, when you apply to the university, automatically applies to see if you get a Regent Scholar or not.
OK，刚才有一个问题的话是关于一个奖学金的，叫 Regent 这样的奖学金。这个奖学金的话，他们是自动去筛选的，就是它是根据你它主要是看那个学术的成绩的这个奖学金。如果在就是每一个申请的话，就不需要学生去专门做什么样的事情去那个获得这个奖学金，因为所有的这些成绩的话都是在你的申请的里面，所以他们会自动的去那个根据你的申请的内容，然后来判断是不是给你这个相关的这个奖学金，主要是看学术方面的。OK。
Yeah, I can go through the chat here. I see a few questions. Will grade matter as much when a California residents reach all the academic requirements? So like a 3.7 or 3.8, will the application weigh more over extracurriculars or essays and stuff? Yeah, if you reach all the academic requirements like the A through G, what we then look at is obviously above and beyond. So instead of just 3 years of mathematics, will you do a recommended 4th year of mathematics? If you only do 2 years of a foreign language, we do look at the course rigor and say, okay, did you challenge yourself with a 3rd year of foreign language? So we do weigh obviously students who are taking advantage of higher performing or rigor. That does get factored in. So even though a GPA may be at a certain point, we do look at the challenge of it. Maybe you're a little lower GPA, but you took a lot more challenging courses. That will factor in and obviously way more heavily than a student who has a 3.95, but only took very basic non-honors classes. We would weigh the curriculum over that.
OK， 所以刚才这个问题的话是指说，就是在那个相当于是这个学术成绩的话，那个比如说3.7和3.8，他们会不会考虑的更多一点，或者是对那个课外课程的话，这些会考虑更多一点。Bryan 提到的就是说，在那个比如说你假如说举个例来说，你去上那个更难的这些课程的话，即使GPA 的成绩可能没有那么高，但是他们也会去考虑，就是因为这个课程属于比较难。假如说你所有的课程都非常简单的话，那他们考虑的就是，即使你的 GPA 的成绩比较高，那他们相当于是他们的这个比重的话是不一样的。所以你即使你的成绩低，但是你的课程比较难，所以它比重可能会更高一点，这样子。
Yeah, another question is about the total 8 credited AP classes to be on the 10th and 11th grade. That is correct. When we calculate and we cap it at 8, it is primarily looking at 10th and 11th grade. When you submit the application, we don't see the grades for senior year. So that's why senior year doesn't really count for the GPA or waiting until senior year to take a lot of APs. because we won't factor that in. We were really only looking at 10th and 11th grade for the GPA calculation.
所以这个 GPA 的成绩的话，主要是看那个第10年级和第11年级，因为那个最后一年的话，他们基本上不会看到那个成绩的。所以如果是要去上这个 AP 课程的话，就基本上会考虑只有在10年级和10年级和11年级的这样的成绩。
Another question is about academic achievement in specific. Is it like studying lab study in university? Yeah. Academic achievement in a specific academic area means that are you excelling something within one discipline? So it could be if you did extra research in a lab and you're a bio major and you did that, or maybe you want to be a business major and you started your own company and you actually got a lot of money. So it's really just any achievements that focus on one specific academic area. So, if there's a physics class and you decided to help do research or build a drone or something like that, or do something with a research study, those are the things we're looking for. So we want to definitely report those things out. Engineering, if you built or help contribute to building a structure or doing research on that. With the UC's, research is important, so that's why you're hearing me say research quite a bit.
所以这个就刚才说的这个学术上的这个成就的话，具体的解释内容，比如说像在那个大学里面，然后进行相关的这种这个实验室的研究什么之类的，这些的话都会那个作为他们主要考虑。因为 UCI 的话是一个以研究为主的一个学校，所以它会对，举个来说，你要如果是上那个商科的话，但是你举个来说，假如说你已经开了自己的公司，而且已经开始赚钱了，这些都是那个他们考虑的一个因素。或者是比如说你那个是上那个物理课的话，然后你有参与去那个做相关的这个物理实验，或者是你是做那个工科的话，然后你有帮忙去做这个这种飞行器啊什么之类的，这些的话都是会在你的学术上面的成就上，然后作为一个考虑的一个主要因素。
Okay. I see one question in Chinese. I don't know if you already answered that.
Let me check. Use AT for SAT and ACT. UC is all of UC don't consider it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So all of UC for next year and the next few years, all the UC campuses will not be using SAT or ACT.
Okay. 所以对这个确实是 UC 的所有的大学都不考虑那个 SAT 和 ACT 的成绩，至少可能在未来的几年之内都是这样子。
Okay. The next question is about Irvine residents getting better acceptance rates. So let me be clear, where you live has no impact on the admissions rate. So we do not benefit living in Irvine as an extra point for students living here. We consider everyone in California as a California resident or living in the States. So that's really the only, the only consideration is if you're a California resident or not on that end. When we look about context, really the only thing is knowing that you live in Orange County, we know our backyard. So we know the opportunities that students have. So the best thing to do is ensure that students are taking advantage of those opportunities. A student who does really well but doesn't get involved in a lot of areas, they can't use the excuse that there's no opportunity, because here in Irvine, there's a lot of ways to volunteer, to be a leader, to get involved, to do research, to do an internship, to get a job. All of those things we want to see. So that's the important part, is that everyone, in Irvine and Orange County, where students have a lot of opportunity, we want to make sure students are taking advantage of opportunity. That's the biggest thing. A student will not just, like I said, will not just get admitted just based on a GPA alone. There will be a lot of other factors that kind of come into play. We're looking at a holistic review of the application.
所以那个有一个问题的话，就是提到，就是说作为尔湾居民的话，是不是因为住在尔湾，上 UCI 的话会有更好的这样的录取率？那个 Bryan 提到，其实没有。这个它是整个加州的这样的系统的话，加州的所有的居民他是统一公平对待的。那个，但是他们比较了解尔湾，就是假如说你住在尔湾的话，他们希望看到，因为在尔湾的这个各种各样的机会很多嘛，比如说有工作机会啊，有做研究的机会啊，有各种那个相关的这些机会。大环境，你有没有去做义工啊什么之类这些？就是说你有没有就是充分的利用你所在的这些 这个就是所在的环境和机会，然后去充分的去利用这些环境机会，然后来那个更多的这个参与。因为你不能以就是说你没有机会，然后作为理由，然后说你没有去参与这样子。Okay.
All right, and I see the next question is undecided students. Yeah, how is that for majors that would be more popular? So that is a really great question because undecided students, yes, are actually not one of the most popular applied to majors. And so if you apply undecided, it actually probably means that you're open to any other major on campus. And I always encourage that if you don't really know what major you want to get into, pick undecided because they will prepare you for the major. Now, if you're planning to apply as undecided because you know that business is very impacted and you may not get selected like that, but you eventually want to get into business, I'm going to say that that's fine to apply undecided, but there's no guarantee that you're going to get into the business major. So it's one thing is the priority to get to UCI as a business major or just get admitted to UCI. So that's really where you have to make the decision. If you are applying to a selective major, know that it's selective and you may not get in. If you apply to UCI, that's great and you can get in, but also don't be disappointed if it's not going to be the major that you want to do. So if that means that you're not going to be happy because you're not in the major you want to do, then I always say, don't apply to us, apply to where you want to make sure you want to go to that school. Now, the other thing is that 60% of our incoming class ends up switching majors anyways. So major is not really important. A lot of students only apply to, over 50% of our freshmen apply to only 15 majors. So we have 85 different majors to choose from, and yet almost half the incoming class is only applying to 15 majors. So major selection is important for us and a lot of the other UCs, but also know that students will move around. So if you want to be in the best position to move around, undecided is the best position to be in.
所以有一个问题的话，这个是就是说，在申请的时候，其实可以有一个就是不选专业，就是因为专业还没有确定。那个这种情况的话，那个Bryan说，如果是你在选的时候确实不知道那个自己想去哪一个，或者是说对将来上了大学之后的话，那个具体是哪一个专业的话，然后也都并不是特别，主要目的的话是为了上 UCI 的话。这样的话就可以把它选作说这个专业没有确定的这个学生在申请的时候，那个因为其实很多他们大学的话60%的话的学生基本上在第一年的话都会对专业会有改变，那所以他就说其实专业的话并不是一个唯一的考虑的一个因素，因为他们基本上很多学生都会换来换去的这个在专业上。
So the next question is about average GPA for admitted Asian students for STEM majors and our grades of classes taken outside homeschool counted. So two things. One is we don't do an average GPA for individual majors or programs. So this past year, the average admitted GPA was a range. The 25th to 75th percentile, meaning the 25th to 75% group, averaged between a 4.0 and a 4.28. That's a weighted GPA of our students. And because of Prop 209, we don't break up by gender or by ethnicity or race or anything. So that's why we won't just look at all the Asian students or all the Caucasian students. We will just look at it as a whole of the individual group.
所以那个就是说这个问题的话，是不是说对那个对就是亚裔的学生的话 GPA 成绩会不会就是更高一点？所以其实那个 Bryan 提到的就是说，其实这个考虑的这个并没有就是任何关于那个种族方面的，所以他们没有这个相关的这些数据，他们是综合的，就是考虑，因为他们也没有看到任何的种族相关的这些信息，所以是整体的这样综合考虑的。
And the second part to that were, I think, classes taken outside of the home high school. So yeah, if you are taking an online class that's UC approved, if you're taking a community college class that's from IVC as a dual enrollment, we will count those classes as part of the GPA. So we can take into consideration those classes, not necessarily at your home high school. When you report that on the UC application, what we'll ask for eventually is a transcript from those various other schools that you've taken. So any other type of curriculum that you've taken, if you report it on the application, we will need to see a transcript from that.
OK. 所以对于那个在那个学校外的这些课程的话，他们都会需要相关的成绩单。举个例来说，但是这些成绩的话是需要在那个 UCI 他们已经批准的那些就是课程里面，然后你可以去 take 的话，他们会算作你的这个 GPA 的成绩的。比如说那个IVC 的话，他们有一些成绩，有一些课程的话，假如说去那个上的话，他们是可以算作那个 GPA 的成绩的一部分的。
The next question is, what's UCI's most popular majors? Nursing, science, and business are the most popular majors with a limited number of spots. I'll just tell you that. Nursing, we actually only have 30 spots available for incoming students, and we actually get over 4,000 applications. So it's a really, really low subsidy. The reason is because it's actually the California State Nursing Licensing Board that sets up the thing. So it's not even UCI specifically, it's the state licensing board that tells all the nursing schools in the state how many students they can have in their nursing programs. So business is a little bit of the same. It's very limited, about a couple hundred, maybe 250 spots of freshmen. And we typically get over 6,000 applications. So those are probably the most limited ones. Biological sciences are our next most popular major, but there's not really a cap on that one. So students who are admitted and are qualified will usually get bio as their first choice. So after that, it's engineering and then computer science.
所以刚才那个就 Bryan 提到了 I need to have a really good memory.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of information, right?
And then the numbers too.
I know.
刚才提到就是说最那个哪些专业的话是属于那个最UCI 最那个最热门的这样的专业，还有他们大概录取率是多少？刚提到第一个的话是那个护士专业，护士专业的话基本上他们会收到大概4000多个申请，但是实际上只有30个名额，这个是由那个护士的那个协会，然后他们来规定，就每个这些护士的有护士专业的学校的话，他们可以录取几个学生，所以并不是由 UCI 来做决定的。然后另外的话，他们的商科也是，他们商科基本上只录取200个学生，但是他们每年收到可能6000多个申请这样子。然后下一个的话是他们的生物专业，生物专业的好处就是它并没有一个上限，所以只要是达到他们的要求的话，都会那个基本上都会录取。另外的话就是关于那个就是那个计算机科学这方面都是那个非常热门的一些专业。刚才 Bryan 他提到的就是说，基本上UCI 一共有80多个专业，然后通常的话是它大概有14到15个专业是最多人申请的。Okay.
I see 2 questions next in Chinese. If you want to.
The question is SAT is not necessary. Yes, I think we answered that already. Yeah.
Not necessary.
Yes. The second one is urban hybrid and IVA students GPA. If in the UCI admission system, is that the same as all the other? I think there are traditional students. Is that going to be the same?
Maybe. Yeah, that is the same. Yeah. So everything. Even if you were taking hybrid classes, we're looking at it as the same. So a grade is going to be a grade no matter what. A student can explain on the application if their school was a hybrid or not. So there's a section called the additional comments, and students can tell us a little bit about what happened. If it was hybrid, if it was in person, if it was a mixture, if it was fully remote. We will take that into consideration about the grade. So like I said, the more information you tell us about that situation, we can account for that when we review the application.
Okay. 就是这个问题的话是关于 hybrid 的学生，还有就是纯线上的学生，他们是不是同样来看的？那个 UCI 的话，就是你在申请的时候，你要可以去说明，他们有一个专门的一个说明的区域，你来解释。就是如果你给 UCI 提供更多的相关这些背景的信息的话，会帮助他们来那个去看你的成绩，这样子，看和考虑你的成绩，这样。Okay.
Okay, the next one. If a student graduates from high school in California with an F visa belong to non-residents, what are the average GPA of a UC admission for resident versus non-resident? We do separate that out. So even though you graduate from a California high school, we will still look at you as either a resident or non-resident for eligibility on that end. So a non-resident student still has to have a 3.4 or above. However, we are obviously selecting way above that. So our students who are non-residents typically fall within that 4 to 4.28 range that I'm talking about. So it's really the same group of students. We're really looking at high achieving students on the front end. So just because a 3.4 is the minimum, again, we're not selecting at the minimum level anywhere close to that. We're looking at students really in the 3.9 and above range, regardless if they're residents or non-resident.
所以就是说，对于那个如果是在高中毕业的时候是那个学生签证，就是属于外国人身份的话，不是那个本地人身份的话，他们的这个 GPA 成绩是不是一样的？其实那个对于那个最低的这个不是本地生的这个成绩会更高一点，但实际上他们在录取的时候，他们都是大概至少要超过3.9，然后以及4.0这样的成绩，所以他们的成绩实际上是比那个最低要求的话都高了很多，所以实际上就是要求的话都是比较高的这样子。
Majors at UCI that we don't accept the transfer admission guarantee. Nursing, our computer science major, and then our business major, and then our dance and music majors. You cannot do the transfer admission guarantee. The dance and music, it's because you have to do an audition, and the other ones are because it's too selective. And then yes, UCLA, UC San Diego, UC Berkeley don't even offer any transfer admission guarantee to anything. They are not part of that program.
所以那个就是刚才说到的这个，就是转学生的话，他们有一个保证进 UCI 的这样的一个专业的话，UC 大多数的专业的话都可以保证，但是有几个专业不行，就是商科、护士科以及那个科学类的这样的都不行。包括他们的那个就是艺术类的和那个就是舞蹈专业这些的话都没有，因为他们有专门的这样的一个这个录取和面试的这样的一个过程。然后 UCLA 和 UC San Diego 和 UC 那个 Barbara 的话，他们没有这样的这个保证入学的这样的项目。Okay.
For transfer admission, do you only review the academic requirement? What other requirements? So we actually do also a holistic review of the application for transfers, even though we focus on the academics. If a student who is a transfer student is involved in leadership, in clubs, or has a full-time job, or any other situation that's going on, please, we want to know about that because we can actually use that in the application as well. So that definitely helps the application because we're also at a point where just because you meet the requirements of a transfer major doesn't mean, again, you're going to get in. We are getting way more applications than we actually have space for in terms of selections. So we do look at other parts of your transfer application, such as the involvements and things. But the nice thing is that it's only part of when you're in community college. So it's not anything earlier in high school and it's not later. So if you're working while you're studying, all of that stuff, we want to know those.
所以对于那个转学生的话，就是说是不是只看那个学术成绩，然后其他的成绩会不会也看？对，因为他们的在申请的话，毕竟大家刚刚看到也是40%多的这样录取率嘛，并不是所有的学生都录取到。那所以除了看这个学术成绩以外的话，其他的比如说你是不是有全职的工作呀，其他的这种研究啊，其他的这些义工参与啊什么之类，这些也都是他们也考虑的因素，会帮助你整个这样的申请。然后另外的话就是说需要在那个申请的时候，然后把这些内容都写详细，这样的话能够帮助 UCI 去那个做更好的决定，这样子。
Okay, let me see here. More specific information about acceptance of business. Yeah, so our business, again, is very selective. And yes, grades and academics are one aspect of it. So I always recommend putting an alternate major down when you apply to UCI. So if business is your first choice, go ahead and put business. But if by chance that you are still selected to the university, but business is full, we will offer you that second choice major. So something like a business economics or another major of your choice, international studies for international business, whatever it is, I always recommend put an alternate major down because we could possibly select you to the alternate major if that primary major you apply to is full.
Okay. 所以就是说，如果是那个 UCI 的这个商科的话，其实也是非常 popular，刚才也提到了。所以就是在你申请的时候，其实Bryan 的建议就是说，你最好是在那个放一个就是第二可选的那个这样的一个专业。所以假如说你的第一个专业的话，就是商科没有被录取的话，那可能跟商科相关的一些专业的话，然后你可以放作第二志愿，这样的话也有可能会那个 UCI 会录取你在那个相关的那些跟商科相关的这些专业里面。
Okay. Yeah, the next question is about international students from Canada. In reality, we actually don't get a lot of Canadian students applying to the US, primarily because Canada has a very similar and good quality higher education school. So a lot of students actually aren't applying from Canada. If they are, they do have to be treated like any other international student with the same international requirements like that. But we actually just don't see a lot. Canada is probably on the lower end of we get about applications from over 40 different countries. They're probably in the middle somewhere. Like I said, Canadian students just have a lot of good opportunities in Canada to apply to. So why pay all of that out of state tuition money to come into the US when they can get the same quality of education in their own country and at the same price, at a same at a better price, basically.
对，所以就是说刚才有一个问题的话，就是说加拿大的话有没有很多加拿大的国际学生？那个 Bryan 提到，其实可能并不是很多，大概可能也就是他们大概有申请的有40多个国家都在申请跟 UCI，那他们可能在那个就是相当于是比较少的那一个类别的，因为可能那个加拿大的那个他们的大学教育也是非常好的，所以没有必要就是到那个付更高的这样的学费，然后来那个UC 这边来读书。Okay.
Yeah, the application fee, this is a good question. Yes, even though it's one application, each campus costs $70 to apply to. 80 if you're a non-resident student, but basically $70 for each campus you want to select to. So you can apply to as many campuses as you want. You can apply to all 9, but that's just going to cost you $630 versus if you just apply to like 3 or 4 campuses. My recommendation is always apply broadly because, like I said, every UC campus applies their selection a little differently. And so you should only apply to the schools that you would really consider going to.
所以就是说UCA 的话，他们是同一个申请嘛，来去所有的学校，但是他们会选择就是说假如说你要去不同的这个分校的话，每一个是单独收那个就是申请费的，大概是本地生的话是70块钱，然后外地生的话是80多，所以就是说，假如说你可以去多选择几个真正的想让那个自己想要去的，然后来做相关这样的申请。
If a student attended the high school in US but not a citizen, when they have questions about the application, yes, they contact our office. So our office handles both domestic and international students as well. So feel free to, contact our office if there's questions about the application.
OK， 所以就是说，假如说不管是本地生啊、国际生啊有问题，都是联系那个 Bryan 他们这个办公室，然后来回答相关的问题。
How do you think of Chinese students taking AP Chinese? Will they get credit from that, or the admissions will think it's a shortcut? No, we actually don't. We see a lot of students taking their native language, which is fine. If they pass the AP test with the 3, 4, or 5, we'll definitely give them elective credit. It also allows them to skip out of certain foreign languages, possibly on campus, and that's not a problem. What happens is that a lot of students, if that's your only AP, then it could in context look a little shortcut because maybe you didn't take any other APs. Like if you didn't take AP history or chemistry or English or something like that, and that's the only one it is, then that gives us, because we can actually see the school information and see how many AP classes are offered at that school. So if you only took 2 AP classes in Chinese, but the school offers 20 AP classes, then that factors into the rigor of the academic record.
所以刚才这个问题的话，就是说，如果是华人的学生，然后如果是上那个 AP 的中文的话，会不会感觉好像是一个就是让那个录取部门感觉是个捷径？其实没有，他们这个是他们经常会看到的这样的在申请里面有的。 但是就是说，假如说这个中文的这个 AP 课程的话，是你唯一的一个 AP 课程的话，那他们可能就会觉得它有点捷径的感觉。
Okay. The next one is about capped majors. Yeah, I think I talked about the capped majors already, primarily nursing and business and engineering. In reality, all of our majors are actually capped because there's only a certain number of spots that we have for each major for entering class. We just don't have that readily available because it changes every year. It depends on state funding. It depends on the program, and it also depends on the number of students applying. So it's not like it's a number that's hard capped every year. Every year we look at the amount of funding the state gives us, not to mention the different programs that we have in the classes offered to kind of determine the space we have for these majors.
所以刚才提到的就是说这个那个录取人数有限的，刚才的就是说刚才提到的这几个护士啊，上课这个他们的电脑科学类的这些专业，其实每一个专业的话都是有那个上限的录取上限的，只是就是每年不是固定的，可能根据那个加州的这个拨款呀，还有各方面的因素，然后是一个变化的一个值，所以就没有一个还有当年那个申请的人数啊，这些都是有变化的，所以没有一个具体的这样的一个上限的值。
The next question, yeah, does participation in Cosmo help with UC admission? Yes, it does. So any of these programs that UCI offers, you can list them under the educational partnerships or preparation programs. And we love to see those. That's why we offer these programs. So if you want to take advantage of any of our summer programs or specialty programs that UC Irvine offers, definitely list that on the application. Those are always good things to have.
刚才就问到了，如果是参与一些 UCI 的这样的一些就是这些课程的话，会不会有帮助？有帮助的，因为他们这个相当于是你如何利用这个本地的这些资源，所以这些的话都是那个会对你的申请有相关的帮助。And also like how about the continuing education? If they do classes in the continuing education, is that helpful too?
Yeah, if they take some with our continuing education or extension classes, yeah. If those are used, I mean, anyways, there's definitely spots to list any of those classes on there. Yeah, you can list classes that are outside A through G, and you can list any other programs.
OK， 对，所以像不管是那个，因为他们有一个继续教育学院，我们之前也邀请那个继续教育学院，然后过来讲课，然后他们有一些UCI 有一些相关的这些夏季课程，这些都会对那个像 UC 的这些系统的话，这些成绩的话，甚至课外课的话，都是会很有帮助的。
Okay, I see the next question in Chinese.
Yeah. It said the community college transfer is obviously very high, than the directly graduate from the high school, and why the people still want to go to directly from the high school instead of go to community college.
Yeah, I think to be honest, it's probably there's a stigma of not going to a college after that right after high school. I think also parents worry about the whole college experience, quote unquote. Getting involved in student activities and doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, that plays a factor into it. So I think it's just more of a personal decision at this point. I would get rid of the stigma and say, look, a company at the end of the day is never going to ask you what school did you get admitted to from high school. They're only going to care what degree you have graduating.
Yeah.
So if the goal is really, set you up for your career preparation, then there's nothing wrong with going that path. I always encourage that's the best pathway to get into because it's so high. But I think there's been a lot of pressure, especially for in our culture to go to the 4-year experience, like go in as a freshman, live on campus and do all these things. A lot of students come in and they have no clue. That's why I say 60% of the freshmen come in changing their major because they come in and they don't know what they want to do yet. They want to get involved in all these activities. They want to go abroad instead. So if the campus life is that important, like the 4-year experience is important and priority, then yes, I would say, look for opportunities to do that. But again, if you're looking for an alternate path, such as I don't want to stress out during high school, or I want to save some money, or I want to make sure I get into the school that I really want to get into because they have the program I want, that's the stuff that I would always encourage to take into consideration.
所以刚才大家这个问题，大家也可能看到了，就是说，4年制大学的话，就是因为有的人从那个文化的，就是我们的这个华人的文化角度上来讲的话，就是如果上4年制大学，直接上那个社区大学，就感觉好像没有面子一样的，所以这个实际上是一个主要的一个原因。然后另外的话，就是有很多学生可能希望那个能够就是有整个全部的这样的一个大学的这样的体验，而不是说，比如在社区大学2年，然后再只有2年在那个就是
再说我觉得现
来
在这种状
他的
态也不太想夫妻，说实话。
好的，OK，所以就是这些原因，那个 OK。
The next question is, do we look at consideration of high school, whether private or public? So it doesn't matter what high school, we only look at the context of the student at that specific high school. So we are actually not even comparing Irvine high schools together. So whether you go to Irvine or Woodbridge or Uni, it doesn't matter. We only look at the opportunities for you at that school. So we're only looking at Uni students compared to Uni students, Irvine high school students to Irvine students. We also don't compare public to private. So we don't look at, Modern Day or Sage Hill or Korean Lutheran compared to someone who goes to Irvine or Woodbridge or that. It's very much school specific. So we look at the context of the school and the opportunities that you have, the opportunities for classes, and that's how we do the review.
所以那个就是问题的话，就是说对私校和公校的话有没有考虑的因素，或者是那个具体哪一个学校？实际上没有，就是他们那个主要是针对学校那个来比较，而不是根据那个就是不同学校之间来比较。他们主要是比如你举个例来说，你在尔湾高中的话，那他只看在尔湾高中你有什么样的资源，然后你应该做了哪些的事情，主要是这样子来考虑。他们也不考虑是私校啊，还是公校啊，还是比如说 Sage Hill 这些比较厉害的私校啊，或者什么之类的。他们这些的话，他主要是看到你在这个学校里能获得哪些资源，你有没有充分的去利用这些资源。
The next question is, how hard is business school within the campus to transfer though? First off, high school grades don't matter when you transfer. So when you apply to business as a transfer student, we only look at the classes you did in community college. We don't look at the high school GPA in any way. But we know business actually knows that it's very popular for transfer. So our dean of business is actually looking to expand the program for transfer students. He's opening in the next few years to actually open it up to include more transfer students and be able to do online courses for transfers. So he's actually looking to be able to expand now that we've kind of gone remote or hybrid. He wants to take advantage of this in this way. He knows that business is a very popular major and he wants to definitely look to expand programs. So I would say in the next few years, look for UCI business to be a lot more increasing the number of students getting in there because we're going to look at alternate pathway programs such as like a fully online business program or something like that, which will expand more spaces within the school for that. So look for that in the coming years, but he has a really good vision of looking to expand these opportunities because he knows business is very selective.
就是问题的话，就是说，比如说像商科的话，是不是就是高中的成绩会考虑在转学的时候，转到商科的话，现在的话就是说，他们不考虑高中的成绩，主要是看你那个在转学前的话所那个上的那些课程的成绩。那现在UCI 的商学院的话，他们也在扩展自己的这样的一个这样的录取的。应该是招生的范围，他有可能现在在研究这个线上的这样的教育，有可能有的以后的话，可能2-3年或者3-4年之内的话，他们可能会有相关这种线上可以上商科的这样的一个机会，所以就是这样的话，他们就可以大的扩大这个招生的范围，因为他们的商科是太多人希望去上他们的商科。
Great. I know we're coming up to time, but I know there's a couple more questions. I'm good to stay on for a little bit. I don't know how you want to have the schedule run through or what you would like to do.
I think we have about 10 questions maybe left.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's stop there. The last one.
Okay. So maybe more questions after that, but I'm free to stay on for a little longer if we want to just kind of get through those last 10. If that's okay. Sure.
Appreciate everything.
You're welcome. No
Thank you
problem.
so
I know this.
much.
I just hope this is very helpful for everyone. So.
Yes, it's amazing. Like I see so many questions are coming up, and I know people like really hear you and they want to know more.
Absolutely. Well, this is the chance to do that. So yes, our grades of courses taken in colleges including GPA. Yes, if you do take a community college course and it's transferable to us, we do calculate that in the GPA. We just look at it as a separate GPA because when you apply it. We have a UC GPA that we calculate for you. So it almost looks like an honors type of class. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think no translation now.
Okay, sounds good. I'm fine with that. I think the next question is in Chinese though.
Let me check. This is like UCI for the tuition. Whether there's more credit for the local students like California residents, and what's the requirement for the residency?
What's required for residency? So we have a residence deputy on campus. So when it comes to that, I would always defer questions to residency. There's a lot of different factors that fall into that, such as living in California, paying taxes, how long you've been in the state, stuff like that. So we have a residence deputy that is available on campus to answer those questions. So I would defer to them.
Okay.
Any major for education? Yes. So we do have an educational sciences major, and we also have a credential program at UCI. So you can actually come to UCI. My wife did that. She was a history major, and then she stayed for the UCI credential program. She did a minor in education, which actually had a lot of crossover classes that she can actually apply to her credential program. So she did the credential program at UCI, and now she teaches a high school in Garden Grove. So very easy to kind of do that path. We have a whole school of education for that. So the weighted GPA, yes, we look at actually the weighted and unweighted. So we do a calculation for weighted GPA, factoring in the honors classes, but we will also look at the unweighted GPA as well. So we look at different GPAs for a student on that end. Let's see, I think I already answered the public-private question. Student admitted to the major of psychology at UCI, will it be possible to transfer internally to the computer science major? Yes, change of major is handled a little different. Once you already enrolled at UCI, you have to go through the change of major process on campus, meaning that you have to take a couple prerequisite classes with a certain grade in order to change into the major. So you would meet with your academic advisor when you're at UCI, and then you would actually, they would help you get into the classes to change your major into computer science or another major. That's a little not as guaranteed because again, you have to make sure you fulfill all the prerequisite classes at UCI in order to change the major. Okay, if a student came to US after 6th grade, is it still required for the student to take a foreign language? No, we really only require foreign language for high school. So if the language of instruction is not English, so you're not graduating from a high school that teaches English, we would require the foreign language requirement. But so the TOEFL or IBT is only required for students who are getting instruction in another language other than English. Math is getting to the point of being competitive as well. Yeah, so the math major is a very competitive major. A lot of students are looking to get into math as well because it's very applicable to a lot of places. So it's becoming up there as a popular capped major. I think I talked about summer camps at UCI. So yes, those are definitely helpful. Does UCI take transfers from other campuses of UC? That's a good question. So we do have a limited number of spaces that we take other students from a UC to transfer. The thing about that is that we have to give priority to California community college students as the priority. So if it came down to there's only a spot left and you're coming from another UC or another four-year school or someone from the community colleges, we're going to take that community college person over the four-year UC person. And that's just because that's part of the state mandate because we're a public school. Now, the other thing too is that you have to be able to fulfill all the transfer requirements. So it's not like you can just attend another UC for 1 year and then transfer. You still have to do all the requirements that we're asking you to do. And you have to make sure those classes are transferable. So that's the only difference is that if you go to a UC or another 4-year, you have to make sure you get into the classes that are transferable. And then how does dual major work at when you apply to UCI? So when you want to double major, you basically apply as one major first, and that's where you get admitted. And then when you get to UCI, it's just basically like the same change of major process, except instead of a change of major, you're adding on the major. So you're doing all the classes that you're doing concurrently, and then you also have to do the prerequisite classes to fulfill the other major. So you work with your academic advisor to get through that at this point. So. The last thing, I see is sports. Let me just end with this question. Yeah, UCI baseball team, all of our sports are run basically based on the coaches and athletics. So we have nothing to do with recruitment on that end. If you are interested, if you are looking to be a scholar athlete, typically the coaches will recruit you. There is a form on the athletics website you can fill out that will send an email to the coaches. So if you want to contact the coach and make yourself known, you can email them. And then if they are going to recruit you, you can do that. Some of the sports, we also have open tryouts. So at the beginning of the year when you first start, if they do an open tryout, you will get notices from the coach to do that as well. But because of NCAA sports and NCAA and the recent scandal with the admissions and varsity blues, there's a lot of rules regarding how we contact students, the verification of the sport they play, and the recruitment process that goes on. So there's a lot of rules to that. I definitely say that if you're interested in playing D1 sports, that you inquire to the coaches directly. Okay, well, that was all the questions. I know that was all in English, but hopefully that was helpful for everyone.
Yes, we covered so many topics, you know. Great. Thank you so much, Bryan, for your time, and extra time, to help everybody, to get through the process, and really, really great information. And
you're welcome.
Yeah, do you mind actually I did recording. Do you mind we put on the CMA a YouTube site, and so some other people can access?
Yeah, that is fine. Yeah, that is fine. Yeah.
Okay.
You want to replay that? Yeah.
Yeah. 所以我会之后会给大家把视频，如果大家有一些 miss information，可以再 review 一下。Thank you so much, and I hope you come back to us again, to talk about some other topics as well.
Yes. Happy to do that. Happy to have our office. We do have a few staff people in China who are Chinese speaking, so maybe they can join. And in the fall would be an ideal time when students are looking to apply. We can do a very similar workshop.
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much for your help.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good rest of your Friday.
Thank you. Have a great weekend. Bye.